these people?
Who are these people? Hi, everybody. It's Indy. I'm back for another one-on-one. These are great. I love doing these interview shows with friends of mine and with excellent writers and journalists and people that you don't maybe necessarily see anywhere else. And that's something that I value and I think is really cool. So today, I wanted to bring back my friend and journalist Golden Monarch from Golden Monarch Domain. He's been doing a ton of work on crypto, and we talk crypto all the time. And I wanted to bring him in and have a conversation with him because I think that a lot of what he's talking about is really important and maybe getting missed. There's so much happening in that world on the Grift side, right? Well, welcome, first of all, to the stream, Monarch. How are you, man? Say hi.
Hey, Andy. Thanks for having me. And hey, everybody. It's me.
Cool. Golden Monarch has been writing over at Substack for about a year now. Changed his Substack to goldenmonarchdomain.substack.com. We'll check some of those out in a little bit. But first, I wanted to kind of give a little bit of an introduction, let people who did not see our last conversation a few months ago kind of get an introduction to how you got into doing this, what you follow and track, and anything else you want to share about what you see happening right now. So I'm going to turn it over to you now.
All right. Thank you, Indy. Yeah, so I'm Golden Monarch, and I started following independent media and such as far back as 2019, 2020. Former Tulsi Gabbard supporter. I was somewhat optimistic about Bernie back then, but of course, as you know, politicians cave. What is it that you always say, Indy? None of the above.
My favorite phrase.
Because of how, yeah, exactly. Because of how corrupt both ends of the unit party are. So during which I started following channels like Heartlands, yours of course, and I'm now following channels like AM Wake Up, 7Cs, great outlets. And as far as the whole crypto stuff, how did I even get into that Grift? Okay, back then, of course, what is it, 2018? Crypto is finally being introduced into your phone apps, exchanges like Robinhood and whatnot. And but before I understood anything about the history behind cryptocurrency, blockchain, all that, I had a friend or two that they had a conversation with me. They mentioned to me about Bitcoin, and it's like this whole hype trend. It's like, oh, what is that? And then they were telling me how okay, it's like this peer-to-peer decentralization. You invest online, and then over time, you're supposed to make a lot of money just from investing, whatnot. So I think it was around the pandemic, a lot of things just spiraled out of control. You had the whole pandemic, you had the whole volatility of Wall Street, but most notably, you had this whole extreme volatility involving crypto, including Bitcoin. And this was at the time, Indy, when again I didn't make the full dots just yet. I didn't quite make the dots about how you had establishment figures behind the scenes. You had financial institutions that were slowly but ready to push 100% forward with crypto and all this insane propaganda behind it. And so as a dummy, I thought, all right, what could go wrong if I invest a little bit into Dogecoin or whatever? And of course, I learned that lesson the hard way. You see, one day, oh, you have your extra gain, and then you lose the majority of your extra gain from something as shitty as, say, Dogecoin. But it's not just simply Dogecoin; it's all of it. Whether it's be Bitcoin, Ethereum. Nowadays, you've got stable coins, meme coins, shit coins. Just it sprouts so out of control that I want to say around. After 2022 with the whole FTX scandal and the collapse, 2023, I started to notice this massive shift amongst politicians, amongst corporate media, where previously they were talking about the dangers, the risk about investing in crypto because of someone like Sam Bankman-Fried, and then all of a sudden the tone, the language just suddenly changed, and slowly but slowly you saw this massive push for cryptocurrency, crypto ETFs from the likes of BlackRock, ARK Invest, and etc. And then before you knew it, you had like big players like Michael Saylor, who we're going to be talking about mostly today. Michael Saylor, he's on this like crazy spree where he's just buying Bitcoin. He's buying Bitcoin regardless if Bitcoin goes down or if Bitcoin goes up. So we see in the aftermath of FTX scandal 2022 that Saylor and other financial institutions, billionaires, elites are they're still buying Bitcoin. They're still promoting Bitcoin. They're still promoting other crypto along with that. And there's been this nonstop train that ever since let's see, what was it? Oh yeah, RFK Jr. So starting with RFK Jr. He was the one who like really like caught the crypto community's attention because politician, the name Kennedy, questioned the whole vaccine narrative. He appeared to be like someone who at the time, mind you, seemed to be like the independent figure. He was neither necessarily Democrat, neither Republican. Of course, eventually all that comes down with the worms, and of course RFK Jr. is he's no different from any other politician or any other lawyer. I mean, he's all in the whole the grift with Bitcoin, the whole grift of like the whole vaccine, and the manipulation of the whole narrative where either you're catering to like extremes ends of like we gotta push vaccines, or the other extremes ends of we gotta ban vaccines, or we gotta we gotta like basically control the narrative of what can we control and what do we get people in societies to talk about, distract themselves with through like other crypto enthusiasts, controlled oppositions, and mind you. So
Kennedy spent a long time though talking shit about vaccines and being quote unquote anti-vax because he had uncovered a lot of data with the Children's Health Defense organization that I believe he founded, all right, in order to figure out that they were not testing properly these things allegedly. This is what his accusation was. But then once he got into the HHS secretary role, where he could actually do something about that, he has done a few things. But for the most part, he's already signed off on this MMR thing. He's now signed off on some mRNA stuff, and he was vehemently against that after he was already for it. Now, let's say when they first came out early on in 2021, he was pro-vax. People forget all this stuff. And then he learned that there was big issues with the vaccine that quote unquote, or whatever, the experimental shot that they put out in 2021 and 2022 that they've required people to continuously get boosters for, etc. Kennedy's an interesting case also when it comes to crypto and Bitcoin. I think it's interesting that you're making the link that he was one of the people that they had kind of targeted as far as politicians to bring in a certain group of used to be Democrats, now sort of independent, leaning toward Republican, that were financially somewhat savvy, and they also are wealthy and part of the investor class, so they could afford to potentially lose all their money but take a flyer on something, and now they're saying it's doing well. And that, hey, I'm doing great narrative and I'm making a lot of money is what gets a lot of other investor class people to want to get on board as well. They don't want to see somebody else jumping on a train and then missing out on the growth. Am I accurate there?
Oh, 100% accurate. Spot on. And following Kennedy, for a while, he was, he had a lot of, support to the point where, he could have easily, maybe, he could have probably been president if had there had been more of the libertarian centric support that catered to him rather than what was at the time Biden, and then of course then there was Kamala, and then on the other end Donald Trump. Now of course because RNC and DNC just they overall have more money, they overall have more capabilities to run smear campaigns against RFK Jr. Eventually, RFK Jr. did drop out, and then he defaulted to, all right, I'm going to endorse Donald Trump because Donald Trump also a year ago he got into the whole NFTs, Ethereum, those whole trading cards, and now, the crypto communities, including Bitcoin, they see that, oh, okay, since RFK Jr. is defaulted to Trump, maybe I should also default to Trump as well. And, from a perspective of investing, it sounds like, oh, great, I'm going to make money off of, Trump's presidencies. But what a lot of these people critically lack in, thinking is that they don't seem to recollect Trump's previous political stances, having to do with immigration, his previous scams from his own hotel properties. I mean, the Trump family making money while he was still the president the first time around, and now that we're past 2024 with the whole crypto shenanigans, and now crypto industry is much more involved in deciding the factor of who becomes president, who becomes Congress, who becomes different elected positions. The crypto industry is just as big as let's say for example the big oil industry. Back in 2024, I don't remember exactly how much. It was within the hundreds of millions, I believe, that the crypto industry they just poured all their money to endorsing Donald Trump. Since Donald Trump was promoting throughout his presidencies, crypto. I'm going to end the war in Ukraine. I'm going to I'm going to bring jobs back to America. Yada yada yada. But of course, you're obviously saying that there's a lot of once again the first time with Trump. This time around, there's we told you so. There's repeated grifts that. Now, even the whole Trump family is doing, especially Trump's two sons, Eric Trump and Don Jr. And those two individuals, particularly, Indy, they are collaborating very closely with individuals like Michael Saylor, Peter Thiel of Palantir, Brock Pierce involved, Tether. I mean, these are really elite figures, who have specialized in this whole cryptocurrency, money laundering, Ponzi scheme, where they can move their money in so many different places all at once that essentially they can evade tax evasions. They can reallocate their money so that they're not necessarily oh, I caught you. So they have ways to just work around the system. I mean, which is that's one of the beauties and faults of the whole capitalism is that it caters to the very top, while the very bottom, working class people who are just living paycheck to paycheck, they are struggling. I mean, with the inclusion of crypto and all the things from Wall Street to AI and such, you could clearly see there's a big divide in wealth, big divide in the haves and the have-nots, and there's no mistake in my mind into that crypto is being projected by these figures who also have expressed huge heavy bias for Israel. So now we got the whole issue going on with Gaza, the Middle East, just and even potentially even China, since this is the United States we're talking about. They're war hawks, regardless of whether they're from the left or the right. They're war hawks. For example, the other day, Senator Cynthia Loomis of Wyoming, Okay, so she's been to the whole Bitcoin grift for many years now. She was actually, if not the very first politician to get into that whole crypto grift. And very recently, indeed, she said that we have U.S. military bases in Southeast Asia, and they need strategic Bitcoin reserves. It's just like, okay, so you're as a politician, you're now just trying to create more and more nonsense, create like this more like tension between U.S., China, and then you're making it like without any credible evidence that the military now needs Bitcoin. Like what? Like this whole thing has spun so much out of control that you got like everyone essentially following the what do you call the Michael Saylor playbook, which is basically okay. Since Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy is buying Bitcoin, we need to invest in Bitcoin too, because then we'll see our returns perform in record time. So it's like, okay, so we're seeing like a lot of domino effect taking place. Everyone's copying the Michael Saylor playbook. Saylor himself, who has he has deep ties with Wall Street. Sorry, the El Salvador and other crypto outlets. I mean, Saylor, he's sort of like the mascot shot of the whole Bitcoin. So basically, anytime you think about Bitcoin,
he kind of took, to me, the Max Keiser role of being a Bitcoin evangelist on a global scale. I mean, this guy had, who was he? He came out of basically nowhere. He had built up a .com company 25 years ago, ran it bankrupt. Like it was he ended up like paying millions of dollars back, and somehow he's back and he's a believer in Bitcoin, and everybody's just supposed to believe him. And now all of a sudden his software company, which isn't really selling much software, just turns into a Bitcoin treasury company. And somebody said, why would you even invest in this company when you could just literally buy Bitcoin yourself? Like it makes no sense to me that this hype train, all right, the fact that there is no central government behind this at all, that there is no asset that you can track behind this, all right, because he's now advocating for no transparency to validate that the accounts actually have what they claim they have in them. Is that, am I correct? I remember you sent me something about this.
That is correct. So recently Saylor, it was like an event just before the whole Las Vegas conference. There was another event where Saylor was asked by someone about his old proof of reserves or something, where he didn't like answer the guy's question straight up. So he just kind of like dodged around and said that it would be too risky for me to release all that information to the public. So there's this like almost like this like cultish faith belief that we need to trust Saylor. I mean, you see it throughout all social media, from like honeypots to just random like crypto users who are like, they're like leaving little doubt that Saylor is a con artist, that Saylor doesn't know what he's doing. He's just like one of those guys like, hey, trust me, bro. So, yeah.
We see his strategy, right? So his strategy at his now company that he's rebranded from being MicroStrategy to just Strategy, but his whole plan is just keep acquiring more Bitcoin and it will go up. And he's literally borrowing money at today's interest rates to be able to buy more Bitcoin, which means at some point he's got to sell off Bitcoin, because I mean, how much can you borrow against an asset? This math still doesn't math for me personally. I don't quite understand why people continue to buy into this, because if you look at the size of his debt load 2-3 years from now, he's going to have to sell X amount of something in order to generate enough revenue just to service the debt load, let alone have revenues and everything else as a company, have profitability, etc., without selling off his Bitcoin, because remember, he keeps telling everyone to hold on to their Bitcoin and not to sell it, correct?
That's correct. He always claims that I'll never sell Bitcoin, just buy Bitcoin. Of course, I know he could be lying. He may have his own private wallet that none of us know of. On one end, he's like, okay, I'm in the public. I'm going to be promoting MicroStrategy and Bitcoin. But on the other hand, it could be one of those like anonymous whales who constantly like fluctuate, pump, dump, mind you, the price of like Bitcoin, Ethereum, other crypto outlets. I mean, that's the thing about that's the beauty and danger of the whole cryptocurrency, India, is that it's a 24/7. It never shuts down. The blockchain, it just keeps running. So even if you're fast asleep, you wake up the next morning, your portfolio assets may be up, down, or somewhere in the middle. It's just constantly flowing, and you have no complete control over where your price is going to be. Other than whales meaning like people, individuals who have stacked, accumulated so much Bitcoin to the point where if they do a massive buy-off or sell-off, they can indirectly manipulate the current value of Bitcoin and whatnot, which then leaves other holders with smaller fractions or holders who aren't, they don't have, like, let's say, the insider trading, or they don't know what maybe 100% if the following week Bitcoin's going to rise or not, because again, it's volatile 24/7. Maybe someone's Bitcoin holdings is going to drop in value, So I was like, oh, I lost money. So what do? Do I accumulate? Do I sell? Do I hold? So it's like it creates this whole like psychological game, almost as if you're betting against everyone else,
Right. So I'm looking through. I've got your Substack up here. I'm looking through some of the articles that you wrote already this year, talking about the controlled opposition that supports Trump's pro-crypto and pro-Zionist agenda. And I know you've written several articles, if we go back through your archives, where you've made a lot of connections between Bitcoin and Zionism, okay? And how Bitcoin is fueling Zionism. Bitcoin is funding Zionism. Mostly it's the Zionists that are on board with Bitcoin itself, and they're the ones with the money to be able to support such a system, because it requires a massive amount of power to be able to keep the blockchain running 24/7 across the world, right? They're looking to build out these data centers that are now taking away resources. They're taking people's water pressure. I saw that I think you sent me this video a couple of weeks ago about a family in Houston, that they bought a house in Houston, Texas, and there's some massive data center that Meta built nearby that they have almost no running water. It barely comes out of the tap, and they have to structure their entire lives around making sure there's enough water in the house and there's enough clean water and everything else. It's almost like going back to the 1800s in a way, to be able to service this massive data center that does not serve most of the general public. So really you have the investor class. Okay, you got Max Keiser there. All right, Machado betraying Venezuela for Bitcoin. Vanguard resisting it but still supporting Israel. All right, and here you go. Here's your first article about Michael Saylor, was last year, and you talked about him there, and then you did another update on Saylor after he said in November that the world is going to be chaotically remade. Oh boy, that the chaos is good for Bitcoin. No, not good at all. Okay, that all of this, the entire blockchain, is designed to fuel and support and act as another funding mechanism for Zionism. And that's scary. It's the CBDC and controlling the next generation and controlling the future of money. All right. And how money will be spent and created and distributed. across the world. Would this be kind of included in almost like a one world government type of kind of thing that they've been scaring people about for a long time? I see where you're going with all of this. The crypto ball also fueling Zionism. Look who attended. Natalie Brunell with her stupid fix the money dress. I know that triggered you for a little bit. We talked about that, I think, in our last one. But
I was laughing at the time because it's just like, okay, she's clearly trying to, like, I don't know, she's trying to be like an AOC wannabe. And by the way, I don't support AOC either. The whole, like, what is it, tax the rich? It's just uber cringe. So is fix the money. It's just like, she's clearly, like, she has some higher purpose other than just being some sort of honeypot. I mean, she she has very close ties with Saylor, as do other, honeypots who, praise people like Bukele, Keiser, Saylor. I mean, everyone's just trying to hop on, trying to, like, stay relevant, just trying to, like, all right, if I support these type of wealthy billionaires and elites, then I can at least be ahead of the curve, mind you. Like, these people don't see the repercussions of what they're doing by continuously supporting these type of individuals. They're basically creating, like, this narrative that basically, as a society, we are supposed to question or investigate the true like, agendas involving crypto, Zionism. What is the end goal for everyone here? It's just like, how is it that, like, within, like, let's see, almost 2 decades since Bitcoin got introduced, that there's been so much money poured into the crypto industry that you can't even see that amount of money be poured into reparations, universal health care, proper infrastructures. Like, here in the United States, for example, our train system, bridges, they are all collapsing. They're just collapsing. I think it's done, like, intentionally. To, like further screw working classes. People who are living paycheck to paycheck. They want nothing to do with, like, Israel, Ponzi schemes, war. They want nothing to do with that. Yet you have these establishment elites, including corporate media and Wall Street, who are just hemorrhaging. They're just, like, throwing everything to everyone to catch them off guard. So that eventually, once there's enough, like, consent, if you will, for crypto to stay, then the elites can release the next iteration, which we are seeing a little bit through the use of stable coins. Stable coins being, like, these tokens that are used to, like, peg themselves to, like, say, the dollar. The two most egregious examples of stable coins, Tether and Circle. So this is where, like, the whole, like, El Salvador and Puerto Rico comes in these. So those two, Puerto Rico being a U.S. territory, I don't know why I like to think of it as it's really part of Latin America, but be it as or not, it is a U.S. territory. And then El Salvador, which is in South America, Latin America. But you see, like, all these play testing going on in those two countries, where you have, like, elites who are either coming from the United States, from, like, very, very privileged families. They're settling in both El Salvador and Puerto Rico, and they are dramatically changing the whole atmosphere of Puerto Rico and El Salvador, where certain parts of it is going to be safer than others. But objectively speaking, the end goal is to basically accumulate and exploit all of the citizens' natural resources, price hike the values of homes, make everything expensive, but also leave out the communities that again, they didn't necessarily ask for there to be cryptocurrency, crypto propaganda in their respective homes. So now you're going to see all these like priorities shift to like these, elite figures, like let's say, start with Brock Pierce. Brock Pierce of Puerto Rico. He's pro-Israel, mind you. He has a huge ties to Tether. Tether, I think, what is it? The biggest token, right?
It's one of them. It's between Tether and Circle. They are the two biggest stable coins. Sure.
Right. So, they're just making money off of this, and
now you've got rich American, what do you call it? I wouldn't call them elite, but they're wealthy people, and some of them who've made money off of crypto, and that's how they've built their wealth. And now they're running around to all these small countries saying, look, your currency could be in trouble. You're subject to the whims of the dollar. Get on board with crypto early on, and you may be able to stand out from all the other countries that don't get on board later on. Well, Puerto Rico is not a country. It's part of the U.S., like you said. But El Salvador, on the other hand, has really embraced Bitcoin with Bukele as their president. And I know you've done a lot of research into him and into like his background a little bit. And some of it's rumored, but how he rose to power, how he's managed to gain control as an authoritarian, and his links to supporting Bitcoin Zionism and empowering all of these other wealthy Bitcoin Zionist evangelists to use his country as a springboard for launching this crypto grift that we see, that now the price of Bitcoin is over $108,000 at this point. And I saw a prediction yesterday that said that by the end of this summer, it could be as high as 140,000, which would be a ridiculous return on investment, even for people today, over 90 days to return a 30 some odd percent investment over 90 days on a asset that's already gone up that much. Wow. It's because there is this craze to get your hands on as much of it as you can right now, is what I'm seeing. And a lot of this is artificially driven, and it's hype. And to me, it feels a lot like Beanie Babies or baseball cards, a collectible, something that is only valuable because people say it's valuable, but it has no real world practical application and value. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it was like a few days ago that I know it's in the gray zone. What's his name? Shout out to Alfredo. Yeah, and yeah, I mean it's just so damning what's going on down there. I mean, they're seeing their taxes skyrocket through the roof. They can't even trespass in areas that are like Brock Pierce owned. So essentially, it's kind of like Puerto Ricans are being segregated from their home country. It's just awful, I was looking up a bank of Puerto Rico known as FV Bank, and we're seeing like banks issuing stable coins, as we talked about Circle and Tether. It's very fishy. It's just clearly they're going to be doing some big changes that it just further screws the indigenous populations. I'm really concerned about Puerto Ricans there, because they didn't ask for any of this shit to begin with.
No, they've been hit with like multiple hurricanes, and to the point where their country, their land, their commonwealth was leveled basically to the ground and had no electricity throughout. Elon Musk came in with the solar and kind of got them back up and running, and also I believe was providing Starlink to them. So they're heavily dependent on Elon Musk, who's also heavily into crypto. And then you have Brock Pierce. Now, Brock Pierce was already in Puerto Rico for like a decade. There was a hurricane way back that leveled Puerto Rico. And I believe they made it like really inexpensive for Americans to buy land there and to move there. And it would forgive a certain amount of their income taxes, etc. And when you live in Puerto Rico, you're kind of off of most people's radar, which is where he wanted to be as a launching off point. The thing is, Brock Pierce has been traveling around the world and promoting Bitcoin similar to Michael Saylor because he holds a ton of it and he profits from the growth in Bitcoin that fuels his ability to run around the country or run around the world and promote it. So it's like, it's this self-driving machine that has done nothing but go up effectively, on a long enough timeline for what, 12, 15 years that we've been watching this guy kind of grow his presence and grow his influence with world leaders. Right?
Right. I mean, he's way up there now. I mean, who would have thought that, a child actor who then becomes a business entrepreneur suddenly owns a territory in the United States, so to speak. I mean, it's just very shitty stuff, and then the whole Zionism angle of it. It's just like, how do people not see that in front of their eyes? So
yeah, he's very pro-Israel, friends with Netanyahu, got all these world leaders on his cell phone. It's suspect how this guy has been able to exert so much influence by working on, first, again, he started with like a gaming thing, if I remember correctly, and then he moved into cryptocurrency. He was one of the early adopters of Bitcoin and held a lot of it early on. And now that it's 100,000 a coin, I mean, he's got to be worth in the billions at this point, right?
Oh, without any question, yeah. He has a shit ton. I mean, just, screw him, just, So yeah, that's Puerto Rico. And then this is the other one, El Salvador. I think this one's getting a lot more attention because of the whole CECOT situation, the controversy surrounding Nayib Bukele, dictator, Bitcoin, Bean of Fire, his coffee brand. And, you got folks like Max Keiser and Stacey Herbert who are like essentially like supporting and like defending this guy's authoritarian, Israel, like Zionist agenda, it's just so sickening to see. Like, how do two hosts? Well, first off, they used to stem from Wall Street, but then they used to join RT, and then when they departed from RT as a result of Russia launching its proxy war with Ukraine, how all of a sudden did Max Keiser and Stacey Herbert suddenly become like these part of this like authoritarian, like, oh, we're gonna lock up all these prisoners. Bukele is like, he's bringing freedom. Salvador is a place of beacon of hope, like yada yada. It's like uber cringe stuff. So real briefly, I think I've talked about Max Keiser before, but basically the guy's he's a complete douchebag and a-hole. He is among one of the earliest investors of Bitcoin. What many people don't know about Max Keiser, and that he probably doesn't want to even hear about, is that back then Max Keiser had his own form of a meme coin called Max Coin. It was complete shit. It completely tanked. It's funny how like much of the nonsense that Max Keiser spouts out, whether it be his Max Coin, apparently he had predicted this whole like strategic Bitcoin reserve that nowadays we see it being heavily integrated into politics, from the likes of Cynthia Loomis, Kirsten Gillibrand, and now within the state level. I mean, because you see like this whole like rhetoric push for, all right, the United States needs to remain the number one superpower, not just with its military, but also with technology, including blockchain technology. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what it's going to say about Max Keiser, and that he's a complete scumbag. I'm still surprised to this day that not enough independent media channels have actually, called his ass out. Essentially, a while back, actually, Keiser was featured in the Jimmy Dore show, and I did have to write an article about that because I saw some concerning red flags as far as, all right, what exactly is Keiser trying to promote in Jimmy's head? That this whole idea of like, oh, Bitcoin is safe. I remember he was telling Jimmy about the whole stablecoin notion. What is the difference between Bitcoin, other cryptos, stablecoins, CBDCs? But the rhetoric is this: is that so I think it was like a few weeks after Keiser's appearance on Jimmy Dore. Then Jimmy Dore invited on Catherine Austin Fitz of the Saylor Report.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, Fitz gave Jimmy a overall back case study of like what is going on with this whole like digitization, with this whole like push for like digital ID. And at one point, Jimmy respectfully asked Fitz if
it's a Ponzi.
Is a Ponzi, exactly. So Fitz told Jimmy that
yes,
it's a complete Ponzi.
Straight up yes.
Not to trust it. Straight up yes. And I'm sure it must have left Jimmy feeling a little bit like, ooh, like, oh geez, okay. So maybe from his interview with Fitz and Whitney Webb, maybe Jimmy Dore has a bigger idea of that, don't trust everything that you hear out there, especially when it involves hype, FOMO, which is like the fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm.
Always question everything, So, should Jimmy ever invite back on Max Keiser, I would certainly hope he could ask Keiser about why Keiser is siding with an authoritarian dictator like Bukele, and does see how Max Keiser pushes back against Jimmy if Jimmy were to come for that angle. Of course, I'm just one person here. I can't make the decision for Jimmy. He has to make the decisions for himself. But with a channel like his, he could effectively, if he chooses to, really reach out to people and really like wake people up to like the good, the bad, and the ugly truth about Bitcoin as a whole. So that's really about it as far as Keiser goes. I mean,
well, here you're saying that when he was on Jimmy, that Keiser said that the Tether is a U.S. surrogate. What does that even mean? Being centralized by private companies when consumers don't have banks? But all the money is created by the federal government. So why are private companies getting involved at all? Keiser abruptly changes the stablecoin topic to talk about CBDCs as a similar comparison, because stablecoins turn into CBDCs when they're run by a federal government, no?
Right. And, obviously Keiser has to cover his own tracks. He obviously doesn't want to, like, flip up any, like, white parts out loud. But So yeah, the very last statement. Oh, and again, I wish Jimmy or much of the show had made the dots between El Salvador and Tether. Tether has a huge presence in El Salvador, as much as Puerto Rico. Bukele has had meetings with Michael Saylor, the Trumps. He's had meetings with different people from the crypto industry. At one random point, that Santa Monica mayor from California, Lana Negrete, she even went down to El Salvador. I don't recall if she met with Bukele personally, but she was down there, so she was definitely like hooked into the whole like propaganda that El Salvador's pushing with Bitcoin and certainly with CECOT.
She would just say that she attended a conference there, but there's a lot more going on where they're using, like we said, El Salvador as like a hub. They have that Bitcoin Isla girl that like they built a house where they, this orange house type of stuff. And it's really just a big marketing thing. Even our friend Kameshwari Kate from the chat said that now the mayor of Vancouver is starting to get in on this whole Bitcoin thing. I think they saw the other mayor kind of get 5-star treatment with top accommodations, and it's really to enrich themselves, have a good time on somebody else's dime, listen in and maybe learn something to potentially get their city involved in something early on versus missing out on the train. Everybody's got this FOMO, this fear of missing out on massive profits. The only reason why there are any profits is because of the hype and the demand around Bitcoin. It does not actually translate to anything of value being additionally added. Bitcoin is doing nothing for people today outside of the growth in its price than it did a year ago. It produces nothing. Look, Amazon.com delivers stuff and makes things, and they're a company. It's different from this, that it's literally just going to keep going up because it keeps going up because everybody wants it. What happens when not everybody wants it? That's why they want the U.S. government to want to hoard it, to make it so that everybody's always going to want it because the U.S. government's going to buy it if not. So I don't know where this goes. Look, we know that they want to move everything toward digital currency. They want to stop printing money eventually. And I think part of what Elon Musk and this whole Doge thing uncovered, remember when he got in and he looked at the books and he goes, wait, there's no like actual money. It's just like numbers on a ledger. And it's just computer systems that spit out numbers. And I know that all the MMT people were like, yes, that just means you can continue to make it to push as much as you possibly can, that you can fund everything you need to fund. We have the resources to do it. We just choose not to. Thoughts on all of that?
So in El Salvador, yes, so you got the whole Bitcoin propaganda that's being pushed. And anytime there's like, somebody from another country or state that comes down to, like, let's say El Salvador to meet with Bukele, or, gathering those Bitcoin conferences, what they get out of that is that, all right, we have opportunities to also implement what El Salvador is doing in our local communities, within our own local cities, without really, like, noticing, like, what exactly is keeping cryptocurrency afloat, which, as you stated, it's just hype. It's just creating this like almost like an ultra reality where, like, our money is going to be preserved even after we pass on in life. I mean, you got Saylor. He's a chaotic lug nut who thinks that his wealth will never be touched well past his death. He thinks that Bitcoin is safe as long as it's within his private wallets. As if it's like his own bank. But besides the whole Bitcoin nonsense, So El Salvador, again, because of the whole controversy surrounding, CECOT, Bukele, and this whole like narrative to like drive down anyone who pushes back against Bukele, or anyone who like even wants to like push down the whole propaganda involving Bitcoin. It seems like there's like an exceedingly rise amount of censorship going about. People who are falsely, taken to CECOT, they're not being let out, even if they have no gang affiliations whatsoever. One case of, I think it was like this one like 19-year-old from Venezuela. He got raided. He got sent to El Salvador. The fear talk about sending U.S. citizens or U.S. immigrants. You're going to El Salvador. You're going to CECOT, and you're not going to see the day of light. It's like
CECOT was partly built on Bitcoin money. No, like because the country was investing in Bitcoin, and with all that growth, it had enough money to be able to build a maximum security prison that now he's effectively renting out the beds in for less money than it would cost us to house these prisoners here. But we shouldn't be housing them or imprisoning them or arresting most of them at all, because they did not do anything. Again, I covered a story Sunday night on How Do We Miss That, about that there are 278 cases where the Trump admin knew that these people did not commit a crime in the United States, yet they deported them and arrested them and sent them to a maximum security prison for life anyway. I mean, and there's no repercussions for that somehow, at least not yet. And we've been unable to get any of them back. I think there's been a few of them, but it's a very small handful, if any.
Right. And even when they allow a prisoner to at least, like let's say when a senator is allowed to like at least speak or at least ask the current status of, like, let's say a prisoner. One example, Garcia. Well, Garcia, of course, he was alive. There was initial concern that, oh, maybe he's dead or something, but he's alive. He was at this table with the senator, but the photo was very deceptive because people on social media were claiming that the prisoner Garcia and the senator, they were drinking and they seemed happy, yada yada yada. But later on, the senator, his name is not coming across my mind, but he basically said that no, Van Hollen, thank you. So neither he nor Garcia drank anything from that. They just put that there for
for the picture, for the photo op, and for the PR that they were going to try to spin that not only was he okay, but they were literally sipping mimosas at a table. God, he went back to the maximum security prison right after that. We know how they treat people at CECOT, and he still did not do anything wrong, and yet they refused to let him out.
It's just it's just awful. I have some notes here, by the way, from that one Grazo video that they had a while back.
The Lafredo one about Puerto Rico that involved Brock Pierce, but only touched on Pierce for a second. That wasn't really the focus of what his video was about. But yeah, I think that's the one you're talking about, right?
Well, that is one, but the other one that I'm actually talking about is El Salvador. So they had a video a while ago, and they had an interview with the journalist, Michelle Racinos. So when she spoke with Grayzone, and I have notes here. So she said that Bukele did a state of emergency. Everything seemed in control at first. Bukele's a time bomb. The state of emergency still going for 2 years. The regime of deception happened. People feel a, quote, calm, but a tense, stigmatized calm. 240 people are dead from CECOT. Racinos believes educated, privileged people have forgotten human rights. They do not recognize the price coming from the, quote, calm. Upon elected, there was a high acceptance of Bukele. Example used was how Salvadorians via Bukele could now order pizza without the risk of gangs/violence. The justice system does not work in El Salvador because the government and military captures people. If someone calls on another as a suspect, an arrest is made without due process.
Oh, sounds like here.
Racino's mom, exactly. And here's a few more. So, Racino's mom got captured once, along with another person's dad, who she knows. The two got released due to pressure from social media. People are, quote, happy, but they feel they are walking in, quote, eggshells. The military looks through Salvadorians' phones. They take out people from home to look at documents.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar to what's happening, to what's been happening here, to the people who are anti-genocide that are protesting on behalf of the Palestinian people that want them to stop murdering Palestinian babies. Yeah, that's kind of a problem. The Trump administration has definitely gone hard at college students, these students that were protesting, that were camping, the organizers on campus in all cases. They're trying especially to disqualify and terminate the visas for foreign-born students that were here that may have opposed the genocide. It's like you can only be here now if you're okay with Israel murdering children, apparently. And that was something that we've been covering for months. I was speaking with Gen X Girl recently that Beitar USA, as well as the Kahani Chai and AIPAC and the ADL, have all been feeding the Trump administration with lists of people that they feel should be kicked out of the country or put into a detention center. And guess what? That's what's been happening. They've been getting people at their ICE detention, at their hearings, where they're showing up to do the right thing and follow the system, and they're being swept up and put into a detention center. And we're not doing the right thing anymore. It's a terrible situation that's happening right now. We've got to be speaking out against it, letting people know that this is what's actually happening, because I think that the corporate media is doing a lot to shield a lot of this, because it is also in service of Israel and Zionism, which corporate media is on board with.
Right. I mean, crime is legal, baby. It's like, So, essentially, there's no laws. Everyone's on their own. It's just awful. Just complete awful. I have a few more notes from Racino's.
Yeah, so, please.
Since the 1930s, Salvadorian presidents only served one term. Bukele, however, has served unconstitutional terms, which in this case would be his third term. There are no alternatives to work if anyone does not want to do any more crime. Public hospitals has never been funded during Bukele. They were only remodeled, and services have not been expanded. Education has not been funded under Bukele, more so police and military. Racino's literature has been banned per strikes. She was going to present her book in a book fair. The government would have withdrew funding from the book fair if Racino had presented her literature. But yet, she was still kicked out, so regardless. And then Racino's has a hard time accepting censorship because she knows she was censored and could have presented her literature to the book fair. And as of to this day, Racino's is only reporting on news that is not being reported on news media.
Well, that'll get you in trouble. Trust us.
Yeah.
So
I really feel I really feel bad for Salvadorians down there who, much like Puerto Ricans, they wanted nothing to do with cryptocurrency, this whole extreme measures of like police, military, and yeah, as much as the streets and such are clean, safer because they got rid of gangs and violence, you basically traded one enemy for another, so to speak.
Right. Now you have just the government and the military that intimidates people, disappears people. And, look, the gangs are not, I don't know. I haven't spoken to a person in El Salvador. I can't really speak to that. But what I did want to speak on, and what you recently wrote an article about, was what went down in Las Vegas recently, as well as the story about Steak and Shake and their adoption and inclusion of not really Bitcoin, but Lightning. And I want you to explain the difference. And let's kind of go through this craziness of people that are buying food with Bitcoin that we know is an asset class, or, that's of a highly risky, volatile asset class. How are people deciding that they're going to use that to live? I mean, the whole thing is just crazy to me.
It's pure insanity. So, real briefly, we need to start by identifying who owns Steak and Shake. So, they are a company known as Biglari Holdings, and its CEO, Sadar Biglari, he's invested a lot of money into different companies, one of which including the Steak and Shake. So, on his open secrets, he has funded considerable amount of money to Republicans, more specifically Greg Abbott of Texas. Now, Abbott, who's pro-Israel, he has threatened, cities about proposing embargoes on Israel. So you could right away tell that, all right, there's some red flags here. Does that make the CEO of Steak and Shack pro-Israel? Well, he does reference real briefly a guy by the name of Horatio Algier, which is a whole like
Horatio Alger. Horatio Alger, right?
Horatio. My accent's not with me today. Anyways, the American dream, and they believe that anyone, regardless of their background, can achieve upward mobility through hard work and perseverance. The CEO, he said that back in 2023. So, right. Okay, he has his belief. He wants to, become an executive, yada, yada. So when we get to the whole Bitcoin versus Lightning thing, this is what's up. So, as far as trading Bitcoin and Bitcoin, you have to use these, other networks that are built on top of the Bitcoin network itself. So that's where Lightning comes in. And Lightning, it's like a second layer network that was developed and launched out through the company Lightning Labs with its CEO Elizabeth Stark, who I forgot to mention. I didn't mention this article, but she apparently had previous offers from Jeffrey Epstein. So, more red flags right there.
Sure.
But anyways, yeah, basically Lightning, the purpose of Lightning is to enable faster and cheaper transactions when submitting Bitcoin through their application. So, people always talk about, Bitcoin is decentralized. Well, is it? Or are you still having to, transfer your Bitcoin through an official company, capitalist company, mind you, who then releases an open source code, which, of course, anyone can use, but you got to remember, somebody developed these programs. It's not just it's not like magic and poof, use it with discretion, without discretion. So anyways, Lightning, as beautiful as it is as vulnerable to any other cryptocurrency with the whole threat of quantum computing that even, funnily enough, BlackRock had hinted about recently, because
right.
If quantum computing gets into blockchain, then you have concerns about routing attacks, fraudulent breaching, reverse engineering the whole purpose of privacy, private keys, and all that. So this is where the insanity comes in, Indy. So imagine I'm a customer. I'm going to Steak and Shake, and I want to buy a burger. So I have the options of purchasing a burger either with cash, a credit card, or Bitcoin. So when I make a purchase through Bitcoin with a for a burger, I get a receipt. It shows me instead of Bitcoin and stats, satoshis, which are basically small decimal units of a Bitcoin. Um, what's interesting about that is that you don't see the Bitcoin price conversion right off the top. So we don't exactly know. Okay, what was the amount of what was Bitcoin's value at the precise moment that I as a customer made a transaction through using Steak and Shakes. So it could be that in some cases I'm either overpaying or underpaying for a $9 burger. Okay, and
What is
the
this
crazy thing
though?
about this
I'm
whole
showing up on screen. It says 1 USD is 964.882 blah 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 sats. Isn't that like when effectively Bitcoin would have been $96,400 a coin? Is that what I'm seeing there? Because they basically just got rid of all the zeros in front of like how many Bitcoin BTC you would actually have spent. That's what sats basically equals to, is like the fifth decimal point or sixth decimal point beyond the zero. Is that correct?
So within the Bitcoin, there are actually 8 decimals. So one Satoshi equals point seven. Let me see, 7 zeros, and then the final eighth digit is the one. So one Satoshi equals very last decimal point for a Bitcoin. So you got the full number, the dot, and then your eight digits.
Oh.
So it's like minuscule, petite, tiny. But anyways, it's just crazy that they're using it in stats and not simply like they're not saying as if it's Bitcoin. Um. So, anyways, what whether it's like Bitcoin or stats. I mean, there's some like crazy price conversion that I don't think we're being shown the full results exactly, but yeah, I see you're looking at like there's some like math behind it.
Oh, here, look at this.
For sure.
Okay. So it says here someone used, Grok. So whatever you're being told by the AI, the final price spread that they're giving based on the transaction and the market price of Bitcoin on May 16th is $104,000 per Bitcoin. All right. The dollar spread, all right, that the transaction rate is $5,000 lower per BTC. That's pretty interesting. That's a 5% cost. So Steak and Shake is valuing Bitcoin at a 5% discount compared to the market rate, meaning the customer paid slightly more in Bitcoin than they would have paid at market rate. All right. And that, but what it really, yeah, fiat amount does go hard. Okay. So I'm, again, not a fan of buying food. Look at the guy that bought a slice of pizza with 2 Bitcoin now. The $200,000 slice of pizza, right?
Right. Way back when, and then because Bitcoin propaganda, and people accumulate Bitcoin because Bitcoin rose because of all that. Now it's crazy when you look back at how, if you were to buy 2 Bitcoin right now for pizza, you would be buying like, I don't know, like a whole pizza company, not just a slice of pizza, but like a whole pizza corporation. This based on the whole capitalism that we have going on here, the nonsense. And yeah, just like with Steak and Shake. So like, let's say 3 years from now, because in 2028, Bitcoin has its halving coming up, which is within its algorithm. It's programmed that way. Assuming that the price of Bitcoin accumulates because, again, of your Zionists, your whales, your elites, and looking back into it, wouldn't it be? Isn't it just saying that okay, what if I didn't spend that $9 in Bitcoin on a steak shake burger? Now that $9 would, in theory, be worth, let's say, $27. So it's like, okay, so what is really the use of spending Bitcoin on consumer items?
Well, it's because it's what they have now. It's the only thing that, they basically have traded their cash for Bitcoin. So this now becomes the main thing that they transact. Here's one of the things that I just noticed is that this person bought an $11 burger effectively, right? $11.75, for which they paid 11,301 Satoshis, sats, but they also paid 49 sats in fees. Normally the merchant would pay the fees, but now we're paying the fees to transact our own stuff? Ugh.
So yeah. Oh yeah. Ugh. But that's the thing about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin and all cryptocurrencies is to this day considered a commodity. Commodity being that you're going to be taxed no matter what. So whether it's a real estate, a home, a stock, a bond, or whatever, they get taxed. So in the crypto market, every year when you file your taxes, assuming that you choose to like sell your assets, you have to file a form 8949, which it sounds at first glance easy, but it's so convoluted. First off, you have to like download like an Excel sheet, like a format. I think it's like .xls, and then you have to then go through like a website that specifically converts those transactions into like a form. So you're paying a fee just to like download the actual tax, and then on top of that, let's say after you file taxes, well, if you accumulate a lot of gain from your crypto assets,
you got to pay income tax. You got to pay income tax on that money. Not only that, but I actually read what's really interesting is that in the case of this type of thing, they actually will have to calculate what they bought Bitcoin for and then what they sold the Bitcoin for, and they will have to pay an income tax on the difference if there was a gain from what they originally bought it for. So it doesn't just cost you 11,000 sats, it also costs you the income tax from whatever you paid for these 11,000 sats at first. So if you paid 9,000, you're now having to pay income tax on the 2,000 sats on top of buying a burger, which is why a lot of people are now advocating for stablecoin, because you don't make any profit on stablecoin, so therefore you can transact it and exchange it over time without having to pay any income tax. The problem is you also don't have any income from that money over time. While Howard Lutnick and the guys at USDT took that money, put it into a Cantor Fitzgerald account, bought Bitcoin, and made a ton of money on that money while you are still sitting on $1.
Right. I mean, effectively, it's money laundering, and even
and it's putting the cost of all of this back on the people. All right, rather than on the bankers who are profiting from this whole system. We're not only paying their profits, we're now paying the fees that we're eating into their profits, but that's their cost of doing business. We're now paying their cost of doing business so they can make even more profits. It's fucking insane.
Right. And what I always say, usually on Substack, scam! It's funny because the whole stablecoin argument, I mean, that just keeps the relevance of crypto going. It does the opposite of, oh, let's not use crypto. So it's funny how like even like this guy from Coinbase was suggesting to customers, use stablecoins instead. Just use it and everything will be fine.
Well, here's the article you actually linked in your article about Steak and Shake, showing that there actually are tax risks to potentially buying food or other items with Bitcoin that is considered an investment. And whether you have long-term or short-term capital gains, you will have to decide which Bitcoin you're actually selling, which lot and what the allocation price for that lot was that you are now offloading. They can now buy burgers, fries, and other beef tallow fried goodies at Steak and Shake. Very funny. All right. But customers better hang on to their receipts. All right. Because a $14 combo meal and a $3 Sprite paid for in Bitcoin are taxable events. Meaning that, again, the growth that you made on whatever you paid for the Bitcoin that you spent on this, you now have to pay income tax on the difference of that $17. So maybe you paid $11 and now you'll have to pay an extra income tax on that $6. And do you want to really itemize all that little shit? I don't. But you're going to have to, or the government's going to come after you. Potentially.
Right. And again, I'm just going to speak from my personal experience. I don't often keep my own receipts when I buy like consumer items because, for one, I don't work for, like, let's say, like a corporation where then the corporation will refund whatever you spent. So I don't know if that's like, bad of me to do or something. But let's think about the average American. Does the average American hold on to all their receipts, every single receipts of their lifetime?
No.
I don't think so. No. Right. So it's just going to add more stress, more anxiety. It's just creating all this unnecessary like baggage that's going to be on the shoulders of consumers, less so on individuals like Lutnick, the Coinbase guy I mentioned, Pierce, Big Laurie. Oh, and speaking of which, so I can't believe out of all the people that they got to like promote Steak and Shake, they had to choose this bitch. Her name is Valentina Gomez. So
okay.
Yeah, so that's in the article as well. So basically, she's a very controversial figure. She's for public executions. She recently disrupted a Muslim event, spouting anti-Islam rants. She's, telling voters, don't be weak and gay. She's just like over the top, narcissistic individual who, now with Bitcoin, she's just, any other honeypot, hyping it, promoting its success, trying to like, allure men into like, buy these burgers because, I support it and I support Bitcoin. She's just a very crazy individual, and it kind of makes me wonder, like, did Steak and Shake, did they even do like a background check on this lady? Do they even care? It's just so absurd,
Well, I mean, okay, so she's a political candidate who ran and lost last year. I'd never heard of this woman during an election to become Missouri Secretary of State. All right. Where is she backed by? Who's behind her? Whether it's her promoting migrant execution to using a flamethrower to burn LGBTQ books. So she's like an extreme Catholic, right? I would guess Catholic, but she's extreme conservative, quote unquote, except it's nothing. She's not conserving anything other than, making sure that the people who are LGBTQ don't have books to read, apparently. Wearing and removing a hijab at a Muslim event. Nice. Real nice. Now she wants to get to Congress in Texas. So she wants to run for Congress in Texas, apparently.
Apparently, I mean, I don't really follow her that much. She just came up recently because of the whole Steak and Shake hype that a lot of social media was promoting involving Steak and Shake accepting Bitcoin. But yeah, I mean, all these like promoters of Bitcoin, they're like just choosing not to like do a proper background check on any individual be it Gomez, Saylor, Keiser, they are just not even doing their homework and really identifying, okay, who exactly are these individuals? What's their agenda? Yada. They're just like, it's almost like they're just trying to like, don't question the narrative. Just play dumb. Just buy Bitcoin just use Bitcoin and buy Steak and Shake. I mean, it's just insanity, pure insanity. And then
is she the one that actually made the transaction, or she's just like kind of following suit now and showing what she's doing to kind of?
I think the latter. I think she's just following suit. Just making stuff up as she's promoting both Steak and Shake and Bitcoin.
Well, what'd she say? I haven't seen this, so let's watch this and show everyone what this is. Hang on, you should be able to hear this.
Today, we're making history. Steak and Shake, Bitcoin, and I are coming together for the first ever Bitcoin purchase. We're not just buying a meal, we're fueling a movement. This will incentivize companies and sovereign nations to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve in their balance sheet. Steak and Shake changed the game with the good of your health over profits, replacing harmful seed oils with beef tallow. We're gonna make America healthy again, and Bitcoin is going to the moon. Let's make history.
What? Oh God, it's got music. I'm gonna have to take the music out. Okay, that's insane. First ever, maybe her first ever. I don't know about theirs. Yay! Let's hand over more investment money that I'll have to then pay tax on.
Thank you for being the first customer to pay with Bitcoin in the world here at CECOT.
Thank you.
Wow, no, first in the world, she's claiming.
Dining and Bitcoin.
Oh my word. The Grift, oh my God. Like that's a hype train. Holy moly. I don't even know what to do with that.
You're supposed to dance and just party, Oh my God, it's super cringe. But this is the insanity about it. Everyone's hyping Bitcoin. These companies, these controversial public figures. It's just pure insanity. And so, and then finally in the article, I did briefly talk about the Las Vegas conference. Of course, that whole Vegas conference would be worth a whole maybe 2-3 hour discussion. But real briefly on the whole Steak and Shake, they were promoting these like people in cow suits, and they were dancing.
Yes, they were, because Steak and Shake, isn't like part of their logo and their brand, like the whole cow thing. I could be wrong.
No, it is. And so during that conference, basically the COO, his name is Dan Edwards. Okay, so the funny thing about him is that not only did they report on their shift away from vegetable oil to beef tallow, basically he RFK'd price. He was speaking to the conference, and I kid you not, Indy, he was exaggerating with no concrete evidence. He was holding in his hand some note paper. He was saying things like, Bitcoin is faster than credit cards, and we are saving 50% in processing fees. So, okay, but what does he have to show for it, And then you see all these like crypto outlets in social media repeating exactly what he said, but has been no really support, nothing. I suppose in an upcoming quarterly report, maybe they'll release some results about Bitcoin transactions. But again, it's just pure insanity. I mean, Steak and Shake, Big Larry, Edwards, all these guys are like, they're certainly taking advantage of this Trump administration, this whole big tech, takeover, where the company they're hinting that they want to, involve AI-powered cyber chefs, robo-taxis, even deliveries via drones. So it's just like, all right, well, yeah, these guys are making some really drastic changes that I think that if they get away with it, Andy, that are we going to see more and more food companies integrate into their business model Bitcoin? It's just
Well,
insanity.
she said
It's just
what she said was that countries would be enhancing their strategic Bitcoiners. How, with her buying a burger at Steak and Shake, is that helping any country build its strategic bit? It's insane. It is insane. But now companies are allegedly getting on board where they think they're going to be their own little country and what they're going to do. Here's where I see it potentially going. I've never, just kind of Bitcoin backed tokenization of their own. So now I've got 200 Bitcoin. Now I'm going to start issuing rum coins, which is each worth 5 sats of Bitcoin that I'm going to spend and blah, blah, blah with my Bitcoin. And I'll put that up as a reserve. But of course, Bitcoin's going to keep going up. Again, I'm exhausted thinking about all this stuff, talking about all this stuff, but it's coming, and it's just the beginning of all of this, and nobody knows really what this is or how to figure it out, how to calculate any of this stuff, and it's really just become like a wild, wild west, and then you start saying that, and people get really mad at you about it. Like the Bitcoin evangelists and the people that are bought into this entire system that they know nothing about. They're talking shit. They're not on the inside. They're not in control of it. They're not building and designing it. And they're not the large holders of it. They're like the fan. They're the fanboys. They're the tiny little $1,000, $2,000, $1 million token holders. That means you have 10 tokens. How many tokens are there? 21 million? Am I correct?
Of Bitcoin, you mean?
Yes.
21. Yeah. At this moment, 21 million. Currently, over 19 million have already been minted. There is about 2 million that have yet to been minted. So you see that all this insanity of companies, Bitcoin mining companies, that are using sheer amounts of resources, be it water, oil, all these like machines, computers, supercomputers, and while they're mining in to get the reward for the next Bitcoin block, everything around that is getting devastated.
Yep.
Talk about towns like Texas, potentially or data centers like around the United States. You're hearing complaints about noise. My electric bill is consequently going up. It's just creating a lot of like discomforting tensions, and so little by little, it just feels like these communities have little to no say over, the future of blockchain technology, the future of all right, what good does this do for my community? So I wouldn't be surprised down the road, and maybe it'll happen far sooner than I think it will. But like with Wall Street, like with any other war, okay, you frequently get people protesting on the streets, sometimes in Capitol Hill, sometimes in corporate headquarters, and sometimes just in the middle of traffic. We have protesters screaming out from their lungs about let's say for example, free Palestine, abolish ICE, free Garcia, free Luigi, whatnot. Well, what if because you have like the rise of police, fascism, authoritarianism, and every time they spawn, they always crack down on any type of like protest, and especially if anyone does any kind of like anti-Israel protests, they're gonna like really treat you hard. They're gonna consider you quote unquote anti-Semitic. What if this is exactly going to happen with crypto, the whole crypto propaganda? I mean, what was it, a couple of weeks ago that Trump had that crypto dinner Justin's son and other, wealthy individuals were invited. And
the top 25 holders of the $ Trump meme coin were invited to a private dinner with access directly to the president. Now, Justin's son, as we covered Sunday, is a guy who has been under investigation by both the SEC and the Justice Department. But 3 months ago, Trump had the SEC put a pause on their investigation into Son. Didn't end it, but put a pause on it, which basically keeps a leash on Son and turns him into a good boy and a loyal Trump soldier. All right. And the Justice Department, nobody knows the status of that investigation. So continue on Justin's son.
Yeah. So Justin's son, he gets invited, and he's promoting the Trump meme coin. Basically, it's as if he's a walking free man. But outside of that private dinner meeting, you have these group of protesters who are like, with signs like, no more crypto, anti-crypto, crypto's corruption. So, you got like stuff like that going on. Oh, and then I forgot Tron, the whole meme coin Tron. That's another one. Great, right? Because that's the controversy surrounding Justin's son, right? That basically created a Ponzi scheme of his own, which is Tron. But anyways, but besides that, over the last month or so, you've had, specifically in France. So I wrote another article recently about France, how they were reporting about these like very bizarre kidnappings of crypto entrepreneurs, and at least there was like at least two different individuals. So the first one, let's see, Pierre Noitzat, his daughter, pregnant daughter, she was almost abducted by some masked, individuals. And what's the reason for it, most likely? Well, for one, Pierre is a crypto entrepreneur. He is a CEO of an exchange called Paymium. He has, certainly he has, expressed genuine interest in the whole Trump administration. And, he's all about crypto. So, that's one bizarre story.
Now,
the other one that
again. So what? So mass strangers attempted to kidnap her for her crypto wallet. I mean, or to hold her hostage to potentially shake down the father for his crypto wallet.
They attempted to abduct the daughter so that the father could reveal his own crypto wallet. So the daughter, the reason she wasn't abducted was because I think it was like a son-in-law or somebody else and another neighbor. They actually pushed back against the masked kidnappers. So, as a result of that, the French Interior Minister, Bruno Retailleau, they had held an emergency meeting with senior sector leaders that, the ministry would bolster security.
Right.
So, obviously this is not your typical robbery, stick them up. Obviously, this, they were targeting the daughter of a crypto entrepreneur.
Four masked strangers attempted to kidnap her, and somehow the guy holds off four masked guys. Interesting, but who escape but leave with an airsoft gun? How did they leave with an airsoft gun? I don't understand what that even means.
I don't either. Maybe, maybe as a result of, maybe they're going to call the cops or something. They just sort of ran away from the scene, and unknowingly, maybe one of them just unintentionally left one of their sidearms, and didn't come back to retrieve it.
But I'm still kind of shady on this whole kidnapping thing, and we don't even know if it's necessarily tied to him or to his crypto. It could have literally just been, people wanting to go after the wealthy in Paris. I don't know if we know for sure at this point that it was directed specifically at him because of his crypto. Do you have any more info about that?
I do, yes. So I do have another case that happened in France. So this guy by the name of David Bowland, he's the co-founder of the Ledger wallet, or the Ledger, the hardware wallet, co-wallet.
Yep.
And so this is funny. So back in January, Indy, at least 10 individuals, 9 men and a woman, who to this day they have not been identified. Okay, so these 10 individuals, these kidnappers, they kidnapped both David and his wife, and basically, being the co-founder of Ledger is a company worth $1 billion, right? You've probably seen a lot of like crypto outlets use Ledger to store their crypto. But anyways, they another co-founder of Ledger, his name is Eric Larchevêque. I might be mispronouncing that.
Larchevêque,
yes. Yes. So he had received a ransom from these kidnappers that, hey, we'll release Ballad and his wife if you give us crypto, basically. So at some point, I think they did make that. Yeah, they made that exchange. So
so they paid a ransom.
They paid a ransom, yeah, and they released David and his wife. And what's interesting about Eric is how he looked at this whole case as if first off, who are these kidnappers? Are they involved with drugs? Are they thugs? And he had a really interesting phrase. He urged authorities to, quote, stop the Mexicanization of France.
Right.
Basically, it's a phrase that would imply a loss of government control over public safety. Some sort of excuse to blame the prominence of drug gangs in public life. I mean, okay, maybe, but I don't think we should have any doubts that even crypto, there's some, like gains involving crypto, like like mafia type like individuals, like Trump and like all these crypto elites. And what's funny about his case is that there was a misinformation about Eric that he also was kidnapped.
Right.
And somebody decided to launch a meme coin, quote, the Justice for Eric Larch. So it's just like somebody took advantage of all this scenario and made a meme coin. And then, like, again, as far as I'm aware, they have not publicly identified who these kidnappers were. So we don't know if, again, was this random or was this just a specific target because these individuals just so happen to be involved in crypto.
I think this is interesting that Ballon was taken to a hospital and treated for injuries to one of his hands. You know what they were doing there, right? They were trying to get his thumbprint.
Yeah. Right. They like mutilated his hands, so it's like, but clearly they were trying to like get passwords or maybe in this case seed phrases to access his own crypto wallets.
Yep. So that's really crazy that that they tried to they might have even tried to cut his thumb off for all we know. They said mutilated, so that could have been where they were trying to get. And again, we don't nearly all the cryptocurrencies paid were traced, frozen, and seized. So whatever was paid ended up seized. But was that given back to Ballard? I don't know. Interesting. Ledger sells something called the Nano, which is, a cold wallet, physical devices for storing crypto assets. It's like basically a secure USB drive, effectively, that allows you to plug in and connect with different crypto decentralized exchanges so that you can then peer-to-peer exchange your Bitcoin or cryptocurrency for others to your right out of your key to another wallet, effectively. And there are not many cold wallets out there, and he's got the biggest one. So it's not really that much of a surprise. There was, I know you also reported on another attempted alleged kidnapping in like New York City. This one. Right?
Yes. So this one happened recently in New York City. CoffeeZilla briefly talked about it on his secondary channel, Voidzilla. So basically with this one, this is probably the most bizarre case of all. So you've got like an Italian crypto entrepreneur who, to this day, he has yet to be identified in public. For 3 weeks, he was abducted by at least 2, maybe 3 different suspects. He was held in a New York City apartment. And the crazy part about this, Indy, is I'm going to read this. So he was tied up with electrical cords, tortured with electrocutions, and other types of shock treatment. Allegedly, they tased his feet in water, pistol whipped him. They threatened to cut off his limbs off with a electric chainsaw.
Wow.
Like,
police say they took Polaroids of themselves. Wow. Showing him bound to a chair with a gun to his head. Okay. Yeah, weird. Really weird. But again, thugs, and they know that you're sitting there with a cold wallet or even a ton of crypto sitting in a wallet somewhere else. Like, you better hire some security, because the cops aren't here to protect you. They're here to clean up for property crime primarily.
Right, and they drugged him. They used other psychological torture, and they allegedly put a air tag around his neck so that they knew where he was around the building. So he had very limited mobility. But yeah, basically they wanted his passwords to his own Bitcoin wallet. So so the 3 suspects, their names are John Waltz, aka the Crypto King of Kentucky, a Swiss crypto investor, William Bukele, and then an aspiring actress by the name of Beatrice Fauci. So what's really strange about this whole case, Indy, besides the torture devices, is that I think all these 4 individuals, I think they know one another. I think they're acquainted with one another. So this isn't just some random, I'm going to just kidnap somebody, I'm going to hold him ransom. No. I think they know this entrepreneur. They know who this guy is. So, maybe they held him up for like 3 weeks because, maybe they wanted, as they say, their piece of the pie.
No, they know he has it, and they're basically going to shake him down and steal it from him, and who's going to stop him? Right?
Exactly. And, as I've mentioned a few times already, it's really bizarre that the mainstream media, they're not even identifying, they're not even like disclosing the identity of the Italian entrepreneur. They're not even naming them. I'm not sure why that is.
Maybe to protect him from having more. I'm guessing it would be to protect him from having more potential thieves like this from going after him. But I would imagine that he hired himself a nice security team after something like that, considering that he is incredibly wealthy and can afford it.
Right.
But like you said, let's say all these crypto entrepreneurs all knew something that was coming their way. All right. Maybe an upcoming market crash is going to happen, which means convert as much Bitcoin into liquid assets. I don't know if that's what it is. I think that they see the rest of the market crashing and everybody moving toward Bitcoin as the stable asset. And with Trump pushing Bitcoin and Saylor and everybody in the U.S. government pushing Bitcoin on top of BlackRock, Vanguard, and all the big funds, everybody now seems to be on this train and nobody has financial interest in seeing it stop. So they're just going to continue the grift until they possibly can't anymore. And they'll, I don't know what. I mean, what do you see happening?
Right. So, yeah, all these kidnappers. I mean, I have no doubt that they definitely were, you know, excuse me. They were, definitely. Oh, thank you. They're definitely like doing some, immoral things. Like obviously, kidnapping and torturing a person is morally wrong. But I also wonder if these type of stories, these type of like motivation, is perhaps it's gonna like not only just happen amongst these like select individuals who know of what's coming and who whether it be crash of Bitcoin or the crash of, let's say, the dollar, fiat. But what if this becomes something bigger than that, and it's not just some like petty, let's hold this guy ransom because he has crypto. What if this encourages, the public, good people, goodwill people, your citizen, your average working citizen, that, what if it's not fear or lust or anything that motivates them to like want to like strike back at these crypto enthusiasts propaganda? What if like there are people that eventually want to take the law into their own hands and they want to try like they understand where crypto's going. They understand both its benefits and its atrocities. What if they're taking directive action against these, the whole propaganda, and they're entering like vigilantism? So
See, I think it's something opposite. I think it's the opposite. I think they want to create this illusion that people are targeting them. I also think that if anybody is targeting them, it's the people like Vanguard, BlackRock that are trying to centralize a decentralized currency and are trying to eliminate the people that advocate for decentralized currency, that know that it came from decentralization at one point. People like the CEO of Ledger, that is literally one of the people most responsible for decentralized crypto gaining the popularity that it has. Because without that cold wallet, a lot of the quote unquote decentralized is actually centralized, that your key does not store on a cold wallet that nobody else has access to potentially hack and get to. Correct?
Absolutely. I mean, that's another possibility, is that kind of like, with like FBI, ICE, and you have like all these like masked individuals who, they're not being identified because they're being hired by some higher ups. It could be very well the case with crypto and all these like independent crypto businesses. Let's say Ledger, for example. It's somebody much higher up in the whole like financial sphere that they want to seize Ledger's, not just simply the crypto or their assets, but I think they want to like seize their production, their products, like really like turn it into like oh, this is gonna more so empower me rather than the so-called, I guess you could say, purpose of what crypto was supposed to be all about, which is the whole like, oh, okay, it's peer-to-peer, everyone can get involved. It's not just going to simply benefit only a select few number of wealthy, powerful elites, but that just seems to be, I don't know. I kind of feel like that was going to happen regardless if that was Bitcoin's intention or not. I mean, I know we didn't really talk about in this one-on-one indie, but there is always that case that we have to go back to like what are the true roots of Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin not just that it's a Ponzi scheme, but is it actually like a deep state, like NSA type of like project and narrative that has always been like in the works well before Bitcoin was ever introduced, well before blockchain was ever introduced? I mean, through like the NSA, cyberpunks, and all that. You had like different like projects going on, trying to like codify cryptography, code, write. It just seems like what was before Bitcoin was like this whole like electronic cash, this whole like credit system. Now, what comes after the whole crypto, blockchain, all that? Is it quantum? Is it CBDC? It just seems to be like it's like unnatural progression towards like digital slavery.
All right. Well, we don't want to be subject to digital slavery. So if you are able to and of means, please support the independent media you want to see. Support shows like this and channels like INN. The ways to do that are Cash App, Ko-fi, PayPal, and you can do it at INNnewsletter.com or at IndieMediaToday.com as well. I got to cut it off for today, but man, this has been so good. Thank you so much for all the time, for all the work that you do. Again, I'm going to show people one more time. Your publication is the Golden Monarch domain.substack.com. Everybody go over there at goldenmonarchdomain.substack.com. Subscribe. I'll put the link in the description as well for everybody to support. Where else can they find you?
You can follow me on Twitter, Discord, and of course Substack.
Cool, man. Yeah, so this is the Twitter. It's golden__monarch, two underscores. And then on Substack, you can also go to substack.com/@goldenmonarch, and then you'll see all of his notes, activity, and everything that he posts up there. There's a lot more than just the posts that he's done, the publication, but Monarch is also very active and involved in almost like a social media style, posting takes, opinions, and news as he sees it there. So by all means, subscribe to him and follow him over on Substack Notes as well. And all right, yeah, I mean, of course, support independent media because we need it more than ever. Thank you again so much to everyone for joining us for this one-on-one. We'll be back next week. I have another one scheduled, hopefully with a very special guest. And we will see you soon. Again, support independent media. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen? 50,000 died. And now we know our mission. We form a militia, make Congress a prison.